I have a confession to make. Despite my love of Final Fantasy XIV and countless hours of playtime over the past year or so, I've never actually played a Final Fantasy game before. I was always under the assumption that that was the series where Goofy teams up with Joshstrifehayes over here to slay Disney villains or some such. Turns out that's Kingdom Hearts, which is also Final Fantasy, but not really. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Kurojakku. Join me on a journey as we go back in time to where it all began. Before Buster Swords and Bunny Girls, let us return to a simpler time and see how this beloved series got its start. If you enjoy this little walk down memory lane, then please like and subscribe for all my future endeavors. But for now, let's find out. What was the original Final Fantasy? Final Fantasy originally released in Japan in 1987, shortly followed by a North American release in 1990. And not so shortly followed by a Steam remaster that was released in 2021, and that is what we will be playing today. Now, while it is a remaster, technically, it is still very true to the original, and I know this because I used a guide for the original version when I decided to backtrack for some hidden achievements. But all that out of the way, let's begin. But first, let us take a moment and take in this menu music. Have a listen. I am already loving the old retro charm, but alas we can't sit here forever, so let's begin. And right off the bat, we are asked to pick our party. I don't have much context to go off of besides my knowledge of Final Fantasy XIV and learning that this is a turn-based RPG. But my lack of awareness aside, I've selected my heroes. Meet Ruckus, the warrior, who I totally named myself and did not just spam the random button until I found something acceptable. Any good self-respecting fantasy party needs a tank to taunt enemies and soak up all that pesky damage. I will soon learn that this is not at all how this game works. Siren, the white mage. After all, no tank can last long without a support to back him up, or revive him if things go horribly wrong. Using my infinite wisdom and Final Fantasy XIV experience, I surmise that if any class had the potential to revive party members, it would be the white mage. I will soon learn that this is precisely how this game works. Hubert, the black mage. I'll be honest, I just loved this sprite. He's just a silly little guy casting silly little war crimes all over the place. And of course, we cannot forget yours truly. Handsome, charming, talented, clever, and quite frankly far more humble than man has any right to be. Taking up the mantle of Red Mage, who better to lead this band of great but not nearly as great as myself heroes than me, Kurojakku himself. You can tell it's me because of the hat. Our mighty champions chosen, we can now begin our adventure in the world of... Oh wait, what was it called again? Hey look, Warrior of Light is mentioned. So, going forward, I will be pointing out whenever I notice something recognizable from Final Fantasy XIV. Hell, we've already ran across a few, like with the menu screen music and the classes we could choose from. I do find it quite fascinating just how far back some of these themes and tropes trace back to, but that aside, let's get back to it. Controls are simple and straightforward, but I won't be harping on these too much since 1, I'm playing on a controller, and 2, this is technically the Steam remaster and not the original release, which wasn't even on a PC at the time, so I imagine there's not much reason to get all analytical. Besides, there's hardly any buttons to begin with. And what a lovely overworld map we have. Game seems to just simply begin. No quest markers, nothing directly guiding you to where to go, it's all left entirely up to you to sleuth out hints on what to do next. Not that there's all that much to sleuth after, to be fair. While this is technically an open world, in reality it's really quite linear and closed off in some rather clever ways, as we will soon see. The game itself is comprised of 2 maps. The overworld that you use to travel across long distances, and smaller area maps like this town here. Welcome to Canaria. I hope I said that right. Is it Canaria? Coneria? Nah, whatever. I'm probably gonna say it multiple different ways just throughout the course of this video as it is. We have a quick chat with the king about some prophecy nonsense or some such, blah 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 blah. Wait. Save a princess, you say? Well, after a brief look around the castle for any unobserved valuables, they were unfortunately very much being observed, not to mention under lock and key, I set forth to romance the king's hot daughter. Spoiler alert! You cannot romance the king's hot daughter. Or anyone's hot daughter, for that matter. Gonna have to lose a point for that one, game. Distracted by my lust and forgetting any sort of preparation, my party and I head out into the wild with nothing but the clothes on our backs. And it does not take long before we are set upon by a gang of goblins, allowing us our first taste of combat. It is a relatively simple turn-based system. You select your action for each party member from the list, whether that be a standard attack using whatever weapon you have, or casting a known spell, which we have none of at these moments, not even Hubert, or using an item from our bag. Now, the more perceptive of you may have noticed that there seems to be a second tab. That's great, because I did not, so more on that later once I realize it's actually there. Besides, I'm sure there's nothing important back there. This game is easy. Who needs tactics when you can just click attack over and over and stroll right along to the... Oh. Okay, so perhaps some preparation is in order. Should your party be wiped out, that's it. Game over. All you can do is reload a previous save and try not to wipe again. Some short grinding later, as I bravely stay just 10 steps outside of town, I boldly return to the safety of Canaria for a quick nap and some shopping. And oh, this is nice! These 4 friendly gentlemen have some built-in tutorials. It's not the most well-executed tutorial I've seen by any means, but it does beat a bunch of pop-ups in your face, I suppose. Now seems like a good time to talk about gear and magic. It seems certain pieces and weapons can only be worn by certain classes, and we can find some starting equipment in town. However, later we will find far better loot in dungeons. Meanwhile, the magic spells, which can only be purchased, come in 2 flavors. White magic, which is, as you'd rightly assume, is our white mage's area of expertise, are typically support and healing magic, healing, debuff removal, the works. However, it does also possess damage spells only useful on the undead. Black magic, on the other hand, is quite the opposite, focused on offensive tools and letting our silly little Hubert hurl fire, conjure lightning, or freeze enemies to death. And yes, different types of damage will be more or less effective to different types of monsters. As for the red mage, well, there is no such thing as red magic. Instead, red mages can cast both white and black spells, but are limited to which ones they can cast, making them a fun hybrid spellblade. But not a master of either. Fun fact, this white and black magic system is still used to this day in FF14, and all 3 jobs I just mentioned are also still around. Very neat. Setting out once more, my merry band of morons make their way to the Chaos Shrine with little issue. Crazy what a little prep work will do for you, huh? Along the way, we even managed to get our first level up. It's quite simple, really. A few of your stats seem to randomly go up based on the class you play, so there's really no player agency or how to build out your party. I'm honestly not the biggest fan of that system, but to be fair, this game is from the 80s, so I'm not exactly expecting a whole lot of depth here. Marching straight in, I give old Garland a piece of my mind. Super easy, barely an inconvenience really. And the king's hot daughter invites me to her home to show me some gratitude. Oh my! Well, it'd be rude of me to decline. Oh. It's just a loot. Wait. So you're saying there's a chance? Well, I guess we'll just work on that whole crystal prophecy thing, I suppose. Come along, men, we have a quest to finish. Leaving the castle, we are given a charming little cutscene. I genuinely wasn't actually expecting this from a game so old, but I do have to ask. They can just build the bridge this quickly. What the hell have they been doing this whole time? Is the king just paying these lads to hang around the damn river all day? They don't need a prophecy, they need to balance the budget. That's all I'm saying. Stomping across the freshly finished bridge, our brave heroes march north, coming across a mysterious cave home to an old friend. Well, an old friend if you've played Final Fantasy XIV. Are you sick of me mentioning Final Fantasy XIV yet? Too bad, we're gonna keep mentioning Final Fantasy XIV. And would you look at that, even the music here is the same. Anywho, there's not much here we can do yet, so I suppose we'll just move on and keep Gran here in our thoughts and prayers. Instead, we must head east to the charming town of Provoka. A few upgrades purchased, a litter of pirates left dead in the streets, and an awfully convenient unattended ship acquired, we can now set forth across the seas to new horizons. I quite like what they've done here, using something as simple as navigation tools as a gatekeeper to the wider world. It does a good job of making the world feel open while still remaining rather linear. Another clever but little limitation to keep the boat in check is the need to find a proper port to dock at, making it easy for the designers to wall off some islands and open up others, but more on this later. Aimlessly, I meander across the seas in search for one of these ports I've mentioned when I come across one southwest of Cornelia. We have arrived at Elfland. Really? Elfland? That's a clever name. I suppose it is what it says on the tin. Lack of creativity aside, it is a charming little village with not one but two new spell shops to take a gander at. Very nice. It appears that the locals are in a bit of a panic as their beloved sovereign seems to be feeling very eepy sleepy these days, and it's up to our brave misfits to find some way to wake him. Now, if I know anything about Japanese RPGs, which granted, I don't know all that much about, regardless, my gamer instincts are telling me that where there is a swamp, it will not be optional. You will have to delve into its slimy depths, and you will like it. Or won't. So surely, this is the right direction, and I certainly won't need to do any preparation whatsoever, because that hasn't already bit me in the ass before. How hard could it possibly be? Like any good swamp level, sweet Heidelin is it annoying. Walking into the swamp itself wasn't so bad, but once you reach the cave, good lord! Everything poisons you. The place is a winding mess full of backtracking and constant random encounters, reigniting my deep-seated Zubat PTSD. Remember that thing I said about not coming prepared? Yeah, about that. Perhaps an antidote or 12 would have been in order. Gathering up what remains of my pride and a few supplies needed for the trip. The fact that one of the spells here is literally an antidote spell really should have clued me in, but alas, we can't change the past now, can we? Turns out things go far smoother when you actually bring the tools you need, and the second attempt goes swimmingly, ending in our next mini-boss fight, which really isn't much more involved than the simple strategy of hit it till it dies. As reward for my efforts, I receive a shiny little crown. That is nice and all, but I can't imagine regal headwear is going to do much for our sleeping elf friend back home. So continue to wander I must, until I come across an old keep. As it turns out, this is precisely what we needed the crown for. Score 1 point for gamer intuition. I knew the swamp would be important. Anywho, we hand over the crown. He turns into yet another boss fight. Not a very polite response if you ask me. Bonk him the same way we've bonked every other boss so far, obtain the crystal eye, and it's off to see Gran once again! Now, it is still fairly early on into our journey, but so far, all the boss battles haven't encouraged any sort of planning or tactics beyond press the damage button. Hopefully we start to see more depth going forward, but I'm not exactly crossing my fingers here. After returning Gran's magic orb in exchange for a special potion, I pop back over to Elfville to cure the EP affliction, and as a reward for my endeavors, I finally obtained the Mystic Key. This allows me to backtrack to many of the areas we've been to and unlock all those previously locked off chests for various bits and bobs, including some high explosives. Surely that one will be handy later. And boy, a lot of backtracking it was indeed. A long, long walk later, and all of that out of the way, we set forth to Mount Durgar. Oh my god. It's dwarves. Who would have guessed the best part of Shadowbringers would be a reference to the original Final List of Fantasies? Actually, come to think of it, a lot of Shadowbringers references Final Fantasy 1. But just look at these silly little guys. I love them. They're adorable. Sadly, we don't have much time to hang out and lolly our hoes. Partly because we have a prophecy to get to. Partly because I cannot afford the ukulele lessons required for a YouTuber to say lolly and hose in the same sentence and not get cancelled. Anyways, let's move it along, shall we? Hey, look, explosions! It's time to go! That nitro powder really did come in handy. Not only as a distraction, but also opened up a canal to sail the ship through to access new ports, and more importantly, Melmond. Melmond is a dingy little town whose locals seem to be begging for someone to restore some earth crystal. Now wait just a gosh darn second. The crystal, you say? That sounds like the prophecy to me. Say no more, citizen. I, Kurojakku, Red Mage Extraordinaire, shall obtain this sacred earth crystal for you. Thankfully, this terror cavern is but a short stroll away, and once again our little friends delve into its depths. And once again we are attacked every 5 steps, and once again have Zubat flashbacks. God, I fucking hated those things. But hey, at least I'm not getting poisoned at every possible opportunity. Doesn't take too long to find what we're looking for. Why a vampire wants an earth crystal is beyond me, but who am I to judge? Killing him, we take the crit. Oh wait, no, hold on. No, this is no earth crystal. This is just a ruby. This isn't even the right color. Well, the way forward seems to be blocked, and I guess we'll be making a second trip to this cave as well. After faffing about rather aimlessly for a while, a long while, I come across the Titan's Cave. Handing over the ruby because I totally knew to do that, and this is all very intuitive and not at all confusing in the slightest. This cave then leads to yet another cave with a friendly sage lying within that finally gives us the item that we need, so we can now go back through the Titan Cave and then back through the Terra Cave that we already cleared once before, and now we can finally find the godforsaken earth crystal. I really hope this game doesn't keep using the same formula for the other 3 crystals, or this is gonna get really dull really fast. We are adventurers, not delivery boys. Thankfully, there was not much more of the cavern to explore before finally reaching the guardian of the earth crystal. The Lich. As usual, the simple tactic of hit it till it dies never lets me down, and we breeze through yet another boss without much trouble. And with that, we can restore the earth crystal . Take the teleporter outside, and be on our way. Sailing for a while. Another long, long while. These dastardly dunces eventually find another unexplored port to explore, and make their way to scenic Crescent Lake. Now, while I haven't mentioned this prior, I have a little habit in these sorts of games to speak to every NPC I find, and thankfully, just this once, It actually came in handy. As it turns out, that's precisely what you must do to progress. You find these 12 sage fellows in a clearing, have a little chin wag with each of them, and let them yap about some prophecy nonsense, blah blah blah, and in return you get a canoe. It's a bit odd and random, but sure, why the hell not? I've lived in the Midwest for 8 years. Old folks always have a spare boat laying around to go fishing. Anyways, we set sail, or set row, I suppose, down the rivers and make our way to Mount Golg. Hey, look at that, another Inverse Shadowbringers reference. Add another point to the tally. There hasn't been a tally, but at this point, there may as well be one, so get on it, editing Kuro. Chop, chop, put a tally in the corner, maybe a little sound effect to go with it, you know the drill. Much unlike its Shadowbringers variant, Mount Golg is in fact not a floating sky mountain, but instead your typical RPG volcano level. This is the first dungeon that truly gets interesting with its design. Lava floors that'll damage your party with every step, turning this whole place into an endurance test. And by endurance test, I mean chug potions like water or else risk being caught unawares at low HP by a dragon or some such. This is also around the first point in the game where you really start to see and feel the value of different equipment options. It's not exactly in-depth, just use the ice sword on the fire monsters, etc, etc. But I do appreciate at least having the option of gear choice. It gives my brain the happy chemicals. Waiting for us at the end is Merilith, a 6-armed, sword-wielding, fiery snake woman. Wood, by the way. Wood. And like basically every boss so far, you just press the big damage buttons, really. After beating off the snake lady and claiming the fire crystal for ourselves, we step through the teleporter and return to the surface for the next leg of our journey. See what I did there? Leg, because she doesn't have any, because she's a snake. Please don't leave. And I'm lost. Yeah, this was the bit where I really didn't have any clue where to go next. No obvious direction or lead to follow, just a bit of meandering, and then I recalled the ship. My only means of meaningful transport must surely lead me to my next destination, perhaps a port I've yet to discover, so off I sail. For a while. A long while. A longer while than the previous long while I spoke of earlier. But alas, I do eventually find the damn place, and sure enough, there's a river nearby for my brand new, slightly used canoe. This is the Ice Cavern. Now, I know what you're thinking. Ice levels are always the worst. But this time it's not the case. The gimmick here is not slippity-slidey floors, but instead cracks on the floor that let you fall through to levels of the dungeon to rooms previously unreachable by a simple door or hallway. Now, I don't recall there being an ice crystal, and that's because there isn't one. Instead, we are here for the Levistone, an important tool we will need to obtain the airship, and obtain it we shall. Why an airship was buried in a random patch of desert, who the fuck knows? But you don't ask questions when there's a free aircraft on the offer. Yet again, I do still love the way transportation is handled in this game. We've gone from our own 2 legs, where our only limits being mountains and oceans. Then seafaring vessels to help us reach new shores, but limited by needing a port to dock at, creating natural barriers to where we can and cannot reach. The simple canoe to open up shallow waters, and now the airship, capable of taking us anywhere in the world at record speed, provided you can find an open clearing to land. All those forests dotted across the map that just seem like decoration are actually now roped into the gameplay. With every new mode of transport obtained, the world gets simultaneously larger and yet smaller at the same time. It's a very, very satisfying pace, and backtracking to collect spells or restock on consumables doesn't feel like a jarring waste of my time. Among these newfound lands, we find a village hidden amongst the mountains with some neat new spells and a quaint little pond that I'm sure will be relevant at some point, but there's not much we can do with it at the moment. However, I did spy a dilapidated castle when I was zooming across the skies. The landing zone wasn't exactly close, but we may as well check it out. If there's anything I learned by now, if it exists, it's probably going to have to be cleared eventually, so just explore every structure and cave you can possibly find. The Citadel of Trials. A strange little dungeon forcing you to step on various teleporters to find your way around. remember Team Rocket's lair from Pokemon? It's Team Rocket's lair from Pokemon. It's just teleporting to the wrong room and then wandering back through the same dungeon over and over and over. And I'll be honest, I'm mildly peeved about the whole process. Until eventually, you find yourself at the treasure lying within, which is a tail. Okay, so it is a bit odd, but treasure is treasure and we don't have an inventory limit, so whatever isn't nailed down may as well be stuffed in thy pockets. Turns out the purpose of this random-ass tail would soon be revealed. As just a stone's throw away from the citadel lies a series of small islands with caves on them, and lying within is not a dungeon, not even enemies at all in fact, just a bunch of cute little dragon folk and... Bahamut? The Bahamut is a good guy. A friend even. How the hell did this kind fella end up a destroyer of worlds in Final Fantasy XIV lore? I didn't exactly expect to find Bahamut in the very first game, but if I did, I'd have assumed it'd have been a boss fight, maybe even the final boss, but not the case. In fact, he's such a good lad that once given that odd tail thing we found, he will upgrade all of our jobs into a higher tier version. The mages get access to white and black magic previously not usable. I kind of forgot to mention that bit earlier, whoopsies. And the red mage gets more access to basic spells it couldn't before. Even the warrior can now cast white magic healing spells. Only downside is Hubert doesn't look like a silly little guy anymore with all the sprites glammed up. I'll be honest, I kind of preferred the old sprites in general, but oh well, life goes on. While backtracking around decking out my lads with fancy new spells, I noticed some rumors in that mountain town known as Gaia. Now, the guy I remember is a bratty goth girl, but I suppose this is fine anyways, whatever. Anyways, supposedly, there's a fairy that I must find and bring to that spring I mentioned earlier. You'd likely assume that the fairy is hiding deep in enemy territory at the end of a treacherous dungeon, but not the case. In fact, it's just next door, practically neighbors, being sold by this merchant in a nearby desert. Is that a loose reference to my boy SKA? Can you tell what I've been playing lately? Bottled fairy in hand, damn thing costs 50k mind you, but rather steep in this economy if you ask me, but so be it. Heroes can't be choosers or whatever. I dumped the overpriced whelp back into Gaia's spring and voila! We are given a water-breathing rock. Wait just a second, the SKA joke is getting a little too accurate now. Flory and I then head forth in search of, well, whatever it is we use this damn thing on. Turns out the entire back half of this game boils down to me meandering about, finding new places to land the airship and hoping it's the right way to go. Eventually I do find where I'm meant to go, and with magic stone in hand find myself deep underwater in the sunken shrine. After a quick jaunt through what looks to be a drowned city, while snatching up everything I can find, we meet the guardian of the water crystal.
He's the Kraken! I'm the Kraken.
Yeah, no, this Kraken is about as effective and goes down without a hitch.
Does anyone have a lozenge?
I'm still waiting for a difficulty spike to creep up on me, and at this point, I don't think there is one. Now I'm fully aware that in the original NES version, one could only save at an inn, so it would likely be a tad too unforgiving getting completely wiped out and redoing the long walk back, but still, regardless, I still have 3 out of 4 crystals needed to finish that whole prophecy thing and likely the game as a whole. So onward we must go. Among the remains of that sunken city I found a Rosetta Stone, which, after taking to a researcher back in Melmond, allows me to speak the language of Lufenia, a small desert village that I came across earlier where everyone was speaking nonsense and all I could do previously was smile and nod. But with my newfound knowledge, I'm able to ask around and obtain a magic bell needed to take us to our 4th and final fiend. Setting out, I find the tower buried in the sand and begin my ascent. By the light, this is my favorite dungeon by far. A magical sky fortress with plenty of loot to be found. What might just be some hints at where we must go next after obtaining this final crystal. And I've also heard rumor that there may just be an optional boss that can spawn before the very fiend itself. And by heard rumors, I mean I looked up the missing bestiary links and learned that the war mech existed because I want that sweet 100% achievement. But before all that, let's just remove Tiamat from the equation right quick. Super easy, barely an inconvenience, yet again. Final crystal obtained for that great big prophecy, we can finally put this grand journey to rest. Oh, well, not just yet. I do have a date with a war machine. Now, did I come prepared for the so-called hardest fight in the game? Of course not. This game has been a charming walk through the park at most, minus that altercation with the poison a while back. And the very start of the game. But I'm sure this war mech will be yet another pushover to casually brush aside after I manage to find the damn thing, that is. No, seriously, the spawn rate is minuscule. I must have walked up and down this hallway for a solid 3 hours, draining all of my resources at the random trash mobs that keep spawning, and at one point I even had to reload a save I made earlier just to refresh my RNG. Sure, I lost all the free XP from reloading, but at this point, all I cared about was fighting that damn war mech. But with much patience and determination, at last, there it is! We found the mechanical beast. Now all that's left is to rally our men and slay the monstrosity. Oh. Well, if it isn't the consequences of my actions. Yeah, remember the whole thing I said about there is no difficulty spike and preparing is for cowards or whatever? Turns out I was wrong. Very wrong, in fact, so wrong, that instead of pushing onwards with all crystals in hand at the finale awaiting me, I will now be backtracking for a bit of grinding, planning, and some proper preparation. A quick visit to Lufenia to pick up some secret spells. A lolly-ho with the dwarves to obtain Excalibur using a rare ore I found in that sky fortress called Adamantite. Hey, look, another reference! Add it to the counter. Some XP grinding as a knockoff the last few bestiary mobs I missed. And of course, an actual strategy developed for the first time all game. Finally, a fight that truly demands some substance. So here's the plan. The war mech is an absolute unit. One of the tankiest enemies we fought so far and possessing just 2 attacks. A laser shot that targets one person, and a goddamn nuke that of course hits everyone and does even more damage than the single target attack, cause fuck you in particular. If that wasn't enough, it also has constant regen every turn and resists most forms of magic damage. First, we are just going to spam the AoE heal damn near every turn, as taking 2 of those AoEs back to back is basically instant death. And the randomness of turn order means if we don't heal constantly, we are very likely to wipe. Even on top of that, there is still a chance that we get super unlucky with a raid wide right after the white mage one turn, and before the white mage on the following turn, but it's the best we can really do. However, what we can do to mitigate this is cast an AoE invisibility spell to up the party's evasion, thus giving us a layer of RNG to protect against bad RNG itself. A fun little quirk about Final Fantasy I is that items in your bag, but not equipped to a party member, can sometimes be used to allow anyone, even non-casters, to use the spell or effect. Such as the white robe that lets me cast the aforementioned invisibility spell with any character, not just my white mage. Another item we have on hand, pun most certainly intended, are a pair of gloves that allow me to cast Saber, a spell that gives one party member boosted attack power. And this, along with my red mage's ability to increase attack speed, which is in this game essentially the number of swings per attack, I can use these to significantly ramp up the physical damage of both my warrior and my red mage. Since the war mech is resistant to most magic attacks, melee hits are going to be my most potent means of cutting past his constant regen. With plan in hand and a fire in our hearts, I mentally brace myself for another 3-hour-long grind, trying to pass the first phase. Oh, wait, nope, never mind, that took 10 minutes this time, alright. And so it begins! Siren heals. Hubert shakes a coat around. Ruckus metaphorically takes the gloves off by physically putting the gloves on. And their wise, handsome, talented, whimsical, and humble ruler Kurojakku, Red Wizard Extraordinaire, leads his men, and one girl, to a most glorious victory. As the mechanical tyrant collapses to the ground and our heroes let out a sigh of relief, now knowing they are more than ready for whatever challenge awaits them at the end of this long, long journey. It is finally time to return to where it all began, the Chaos Shrine. With all 4 crystals in hand, and the loot gifted to us by the very princess we saved all those many moons ago, the Warriors of Light enter the Chaos Shrine one last time. With one step forward, going 2,000 years back, onward they march. At every turn another fiend, now at its full power, stands in thy way. But our heroes do not waver. The Lich, Merilith, still wood, the Kraken, and mighty Tiamat once again fall one after another. I love this final dungeon. A boss rush of every boss we've seen before, each floor showing enemies from the previous dungeons, a victory lap as we approach the final challenge, the man who started this all, Garland. The true story has finally unveiled itself. Garland, in his final moments, used the power of the 4 fiends to send himself back in time, cheating death itself and obtaining far greater power, creating an endless time loop of death and rebirth. That is to say, until 4 Warriors of Light stole the power of the fiends, chased Garland back to the time of his rebirth, and prepared to put an end to this chaos, once and for all. Using the same tactics devised during the duel with the war mech. Siren heals. Hubert shakes a cloak. Okay, whatever, you get the idea. And as the final blow is struck, and the great beast crumbles to dust, the prophecy has finally, at long last, been fulfilled. A prophecy destined to be. A prophecy never remembered. As they return to their own time, the Warriors of Light, great heroes of their age, will never be known nor rewarded. The only prize be the memories in their minds and the bond in thy hearts. The end of an adventure to end all adventures. The Final Fantasy. And there you have it. I'm going to be completely honest, I was not expecting a genuine storyline from a game this old. Sure, perhaps a little surface level world building and a big bad to put down, but after playing it for myself, I can see why Final Fantasy did not just stop at one entry. Despite its scuffed random combat and pretty bare-bones systems, I quite enjoyed every moment of that little adventure. Okay, not every moment. The war mech spawn rates are still horrid, but I digress. Now, this would be the section where I would be comparing this game to the others in the series, but well, this is the first one after all. And while I've made many references back to the game I know and love, there is much, much more that came between Final Fantasy I and Final Fantasy XIV. At least 13 other mores, likely more mores than that because this is a JRPG, and they will likely pull some nonsense and make a few unnumbered games here and there. But regardless, I will be here. I've already begun the sequel at the time of writing this script, in fact. The intent of this not-so-little series is to compare and contrast each game in the franchise to the previous ones, and watch together as the games we all admire evolve into what we know them as today. So, if you like what you've seen here today, please like, comment, let me know what you think. Maybe you have played this before. Maybe you'll give it a play after seeing this video. Either way, feel free to subscribe, and I hope you'll all be here for the next one. These do take a while to make, so the support is always appreciated. But for now, I will give this game a solid 8 out of 10 for the time that it came out. And -7 for no bunny girls. I don't make the rules. Until next time.